Open up the project that you were working on before and update the code so it looks like this. So in the scene you have your node like before, you have a sprite which is just of the stock art spaceship. Its position is at 0, 0. I've now added in the Z position property so we can tell it what order it will appear on the screen, and added it to the scene. I've also created another sprite. This one is fairly similar except its Z position is 2. So that means this sprite will appear above the other sprite. If you have a look at its position, it's at 50-50, so it should be offset from the other one a little bit. So if we now run this application, it should be a little higher than the other sprite, and it should be more to the right, as well as appearing in front of the other sprite, because its Z position is 2. And there you have it, both spaceships now overlap. If I was to set the other sprite's Z position to be higher, so let's say 200, this doesn't have to be in any particular order or anything, it's simply lowest number or highest number. So it can be as high as you want or low as you want. The sprite which is lower and more to the left is now in front. The other thing we talked about in the previous video was scale. So if I was to change one of the nodes X scale to be 0.5, it should be half the size of its current size on the Z axis. These numbers are between 0 and 1. So with 0.5 being halfway, that means it'll be half the size. If I build and run the application now, you can see that that spaceship is now half the width. You can comment out code by using /* and end it with */. This is just a way to leave a code in place but have it not be compiled with the rest of the project. This is useful if you want to add notes or briefly remove something from the scene. If I now change this Y scale to be 0.5 as well, then the entire sprite should be half the size it normally is. So you can see now we just have one spaceship and it is half its regular size. You can experiment with these values as much as you want to get different results. The next thing I wanted to show you was alpha. This affects the alpha channel for the sprite and is most commonly used to create transparency. Once again, this is a scale from 0 to 1, with 1 being fully visible and 0 being completely invisible. So at 0.5 it will be half transparent. If I uncomment this other sprite, then the transparency should be a lot more clearer. I'll also reduce this transparency down a little bit to 0.2. So now you can see the sprite is pretty much just ghosting over the top of the other sprite. Another way you can affect the node's size without changing its scale is with the size property. And once again, this is a CG size object, which you must provide a width and a height for. The width and a height is in points, which is equivalent to 1 pixel on the device or 2 pixels on a retina device. That's a bit small, so I'm just going to make it a little bigger. Another thing I wanted to show you is the anchor point. We discussed briefly in one of the previous videos that the anchor point is where the node is attached to other nodes. By default, this is normally in the center of the node, but you can move it to any point you want to on the node or even outside of the node. So by default, this anchor point was in the center. I've just changed it to be 0, 0, which will be the bottom left-hand corner. So when I build and run the application, you can see that the center point for this other ship is now the corner for the other one. Both of these nodes are at the exact same position. Now CG point, as you know, normally works in points. However, when you're referring to the anchor point, it works a lot like some of the other values where it's between 0 and 1. So 0.5 will actually be in the middle of the node, and 1 would be at the top right hand corner of the node. The node can also be rotated using Z rotation, and this works in radians. Okay, so now we've looked at some of the key features of nodes and sprite nodes. Let's now have a look at labels and emitter nodes.